What's up, NBA fans? Duncan on the mic, and today we're looking at NBA legends you might not have known were teammates, or maybe you just didn't remember. There are duos that, if they would have existed in their primes, would have dominated the league. Unfortunately, by the time of their pairing, it was just too little too late. The Celtics won't be on this list since most of their history is made up of trios and not duos, but if you happen to be a Celtics fan, I'd recommend the Celtics Hardwood Amino app. The Celtics Amino community is the newest one from Amino and the best place to come if you're a Celtics fan. You're probably already familiar with the Hardwood Amino app, and this is just like that except it's focused for the fan base. You can create polls and take quizzes created by the community, join public chat rooms during live games to discuss them, check the latest news, and create your own account. For this community, I like the public chat rooms the best because watching the game with other fans of your team is always fun. The community is pretty new and I just joined as Dom2K since I'm a Celtics fan, so you can access it with the link in the description and in the comment section, and follow me on there if you're a fan as well. Definitely hope to see you there. And without further ado, let's jump into the list. Number 5. MJ and George Gervin. I debated having this one on the list just because I know so many NBA fans might not remember the Iceman, but it actually looks like a learning opportunity. George Gervin had a good 15-year stretch as one of the best basketball players on the planet. I make that distinction because for the first 4 years of his career, he was actually playing in the ABA. In 1976, when the merger happened, he became an official member of the NBA, and instead of getting exposed and having his production go down, which is what happened to some players, he started posting career highs and was quickly recognized as one of the league's best scorers. He led the league in scoring for 3 straight seasons between 1978 and 1980, and actually made the finger roll famous. He was a 6'7" small forward / shooting guard that only weighed 180 pounds, but he could put the ball on the floor and score from many different places, so he actually has said himself that the modern day George Gervin would be Kevin Durant. Yeah, this guy actually played with Michael Jordan, believe it or not. In 1986, when Jordan was drafted, Gervin also made his way to the Bulls, meaning the future GOAT was playing with one of the greatest of all time to begin his career. Of course, the only catch was, by this time, Gervin was in his 16th season of professional basketball at the age of 33. That's not necessarily old in today's league, but it was a lot of mileage considering the era, and he slowed down pretty considerably, averaging only 16 points a game that season. It's an awesome thought to imagine what it would have looked like if MJ could have entered the league with the prime George Gervin on that team, rather than having to spend the first few years by himself battling the Celtics. Regardless, Gervin was right there to pass the scoring torch to the next great player of the league. Number 4. LBJ and Big Ben. A lot of people know that LeBron and what was left of Shaq were teammates, but what about the small amount of time Big Ben was in Cleveland? It literally only lasted for about a season and a half, so if you missed it, there's no shame, but it did happen. Soon-to-be Hall of Famer Ben Wallace was a defensive and rebounding nightmare for other teams in his prime. In Detroit, he won 4 Defensive Player of the Year awards, made 4 All-Star teams, and averaged 13 rebounds and 3 blocks a game. Needless to say, he was never much of an offensive player, and being that Cleveland's entire offense revolved around LeBron at the time, that's really what they would have needed. Not only that, but Wallace aged in dog years once Detroit traded him. The minute he went to Chicago, his averages went down, and by the time he got to Cleveland, he wasn't even averaging double-digit rebounds anymore. So yeah, just like with most of LeBron's teammates early on in his career, Wallace wasn't really serviceable by the time he joined them. Had that have happened about 2 to 4 years earlier, we might have had something to talk about. But even then, we know that LeBron does best with big men that can stretch the floor, so while it's cool that these guys played together and cool to imagine what these guys would have looked like in their prime, I'm not really sure how it would have worked. Number 3. T-Mac and Duncan. To see how tragic T-Mac's career was, you should check a video I made a few months ago about players that wasted their prime on bad teams. His career is really one huge what if, and it doesn't get any worse than the fact that he was actually supposed to play with Tim Duncan in his prime. It hasn't been that long ago, so you may recall that in 2013, McGrady joined the San Antonio Spurs for their finals run in the playoffs. Had it have not been for Ray Allen's Miracle 3, we'd be talking about T-Mac as an NBA champion, and although he wouldn't have really earned it that year, just because of all the hell he went through in his prime, we would have gave it a pass. Anyways, this was just insult to injury, because not only did Duncan lose his only finals of his career with T-Mac on the roster, but when T-Mac first joined the Magic, Duncan was supposed to join him along with Grant Hill. According to Bruce Bowen, the deal was actually done, and T-Mac asked Doc Rivers if his family could sometimes ride on the plane, to which he responded, no. Look, I won't even attempt to explain that one, but T-Mac and Duncan in their primes on the Magic, considering how terrible the East was at the time, would have definitely meant more than a few finals appearances for his career. Whether they would have ever beaten the Lakers or not, who knows, but this story hurts either way. Number 2. VC and the Dream. VC and the Dream really just sounds perfect together, and if you've seen my video on why certain legends retired with random franchises, you might have already known this one because I believe I hinted at it, but there was a time when Half Man Half Amazing and the Dream were actually teammates. Carter is another player that wasted his prime on a terrible team, and in all honesty, both of these guys' careers could have benefited from each other if the pairing was even remotely possible. Hakeem didn't see actual team success until about a decade after he was drafted because of what happened to Ralph Sampson, and Vince Carter's chances at success left for T-Mac during the 2000 free agency. By the time Hakeem landed in Toronto, it was the 02 season, and he was more washed than your last load of laundry. He was only putting up 7 points and 6 rebounds while only starting in 37 games. He retired the very next season, so you probably barely ever saw them on the court together, but it's still fun to imagine what this duo could have done in their primes. The closest thing Hakeem had to a perimeter star in his career was a slowed down Clyde Drexler, and that team still won a championship that year. Having to guard Hakeem and someone like a prime Vince would have been impossible, but considering their ages, so was this duo. Number 1. Nash and Kidd. Here's one that's super screwy, and that's why it ranks first. I'm willing to bet that you've seen Jason Kidd in an old Mavs jersey, an old Suns jersey, and then a Mavs jersey again much later. You've also seen Steve Nash in an old Suns jersey, a Mavs jersey, and then a Suns jersey again in the mid-2000s. You probably thought that they were just traded for one another, but that's actually not what happened. It can get pretty confusing, so let's sort it out. Steve Nash started his career with the Suns in '96, and Kidd started in Dallas in '95. Kidd was unhappy with the system the Mavericks coach was running, so he was traded to the Suns in the early '97 season, despite already having made an all-star team in his second year. But Nash didn't actually leave the Suns until the summer of '98, meaning for a very brief moment, about a season and a half long, the Phoenix Suns had 2 of the best point guards to ever play on the same team and didn't even know it yet. Of course, Kidd was a bit more developed and came into the league as a starter unlike Nash, so he was a starting point guard for that time. During that time together, Nash averaged 6 points and 2 assists, while Kidd averaged 11 points and 9 assists. The Suns officially chose Kidd during the '98 draft when they traded Nash to the Mavericks, where he'd make a name for himself, but he'd eventually return to Phoenix for the 2005 season. The funny story behind that is that Steve Nash really should have spent the rest of his career, or at least the rest of the 2000s, on the Mavericks with Dirk Nowitzki, but I think that's something I'm gonna cover in probably the next video, so stay tuned for that. Anyways, that's what I got for you guys today. Those were 5 legend duos that you might have forgotten played together or just didn't know. Always fun to think about what they would have looked like if they played together in their prime, and make sure to leave in the comment section below which duos do you think would have worked out and which ones do you think wouldn't have worked out. And also, if there were some duos that you think should have been on this list, make sure to leave that in the comment section as well. Hit the like button, comment, and sub if you enjoyed, and hit the bell next to my name if you want notifications on future videos. Also, make sure to sub to the second channel because I'm going to be doing a lot of cool stuff there. Link is in the description and in the comment section. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one.